Hey everyone, Nukin here, and welcome back again to my channel. So I've been getting a lot of questions on how to run Thrawn in the Rancor raid. So I've been doing a lot of testing over the past week, and I think this is actually the best team to run in the Rancor raid, period. Hands down, and by default, the best Thrawn lead team. So overall, it's super consistent. It can be completed almost entirely on auto, and currently you only have to reapply the fracture debuff during the phase transitions. I managed to cut down the original time from 45 to 60 minutes down to under 30 minutes with this new lineup. It doesn't require Director Krennic, and it doesn't require God mods, so that's pretty awesome. There's also some potential that Thrawn's AI will be tweaked in the future, so if that happens, then this team will become a 100% auto team overnight. And if you don't have 7-star Thrawn yet, don't worry, because I made a in-depth educational video on how to solo the Rancor using Zader last month, and I will link that in the description below. In this video, we're going to discuss about the mods to run, the abilities to Omega. We'll discuss the overall strategy behind executing with this team. So grab a cold one and sit back, because this is how you solo that Rancor. Alright, so let's take a look at the mods here, starting with our leader, Grand Admiral Thrawn. So the most important thing on how to mod Thrawn is to give him no speed whatsoever. So his base speed is 150. You want that to stay at 150. He doesn't even need any mods to clear the raid. I just slapped some health mods to make sure he doesn't die. So that's the most important thing for Grand Admiral Thrawn. Moving on to TIE Fighter Pilot. A lot of people run crit damage mods on him, and that's okay. I actually prefer a speed set. I just like him moving a little bit quicker. I have him at a 253 speed with 50% crit chance. He actually doesn't need potency, and that's because I found out that his basic ability is irresistible. All it needs to do is to crit, and then it will automatically land. I'm not sure if that's working as intended, but that is what SwGoH says. And I'm running a speed arrow with a crit damage triangle and a offense cross, because you do not need potency, and he does a lot of damage. And that's exactly what you want. You want secondaries of crit chance and offense and things like that. Moving on to our next character, which is Jyn Erso. I would run a speed set for sure. There's nothing else that you should be running with Jyn. You want her to be moving as fast as possible, and you don't need 6 speed mods, but I just had 2 extra speed mods with nice speed secondaries. If you're going to run a 2-piece set with her, I would run probably crit chance or potency. We have a speed arrow here with a offense triangle with some secondary speed, and if you're going to run a triangle here, you probably want to run a crit damage triangle, but I didn't have any with secondary speed. And then you for sure want to run a offense cross to speed up the run. She doesn't need any potency, but if you want to put it there, you can. I prefer the offense cross for a faster clear time. And then moving on to Grand Moff Tarkin, you want to run a speed set as well. I'm running at 210 speed with him. You're going to want to run at least 180 speed probably on all these characters besides Grand Admiral Thrawn, of course. If you can't run a potency set 2-piece, I would probably run a crit chance 2-piece. I'm running a speed arrow on Tarkin with a offense triangle. If you don't have an offense triangle, I would put a crit chance triangle because his crit chance is quite low. And then you want to run a offense cross, and that's because he doesn't need potency. He also has a lot of stacking potency. There is tenacity down with TIE Fighter Pilot, and you want to clear the raid fast. But if you don't have an offense cross, then put a potency cross there. And then lastly, we have Shore Trooper. You also want to run a speed set, get his speed quite high up there. For a 2-piece, I would run health or defense. I'm just running defense because that's what I had. You want to run a speed arrow for sure, and then a defensive triangle of some kind. In the order of preference, you probably want a health, and then protection, and then lastly defense primaries on the triangle. This one was nice because it had 15 secondary speed, and then lastly a defense protection cross. And those are the mods. So now let's move on to the abilities. So these are the things you're going to want to Omega and Zeta. Starting with our leader, which is the most important, we need Grand Admiral Thrawn's unique Zeta. Without this unique Zeta, you cannot solo the Rancor, so that is very important. And the most important thing, you do not need any of his specials or his basic attack Omega, so that's good. Moving on to TIE Fighter Pilot, you don't need to Omega any of his abilities to be able to solo the Rancor, so that saves you some Omegas right there. Moving on to Jyn Erso, the only thing that I would consider Omegaing is the Truncheon Strike, and this allows her to gain turn meter from the amount that she removed, so this turns into a every other cooldown ability most of the time when you're reducing basically more than 50% turn meter, so that's good. If you have an extra Omega, do her basic, because then you can just clear the raid maybe like 20 seconds faster. Moving on to Grand Moff Tarkin, I would Omega the ultimate firepower. This makes this turn meter removal ability much more consistent. It brings it up to a 100% chance to remove 50% turn meter, which is amazing. And then if you have any extra Omegas laying around, you can do his basic, which gives him 50% potency every time he does a basic attack. So that is good. And then lastly, Shore Trooper. I actually don't think you need to Omega any of his abilities, but if you're going to, I would Omega the Unique, which gives Empire allies more turn meter when they use specials when he's taunting. When you combine that with Thrawn, every time an Empire ally will use a special, they will gain 30% turn meter when he's taunting, and this is probably the highest priority, Omegaing his regroup, which reduces the cooldown of this ability by 1. And those are all the abilities. Alright, so let's talk about the team a little bit, and then we'll talk about what happens during phase transitions. So first off, why is Thrawn the leader? Now, when Thrawn's leading a Empire squad, they're going to gain a new special ability called Maneuver. Maneuver is great, it cleanses your heroes of debuffs, but we're not using it here to cleanse. We just want extra specials to have more opportunities to proc the Fractured turn meter removal. Now, Thrawn's unique. Whenever enemies are fractured, they're going to have a reduction of 15% turn meter whenever an Empire ally uses a special. That new special that Empire heroes get, that's called Maneuver, is a special that procs this turn meter reduction, so that's great. And you just have more specials to have more opportunities to reduce that turn meter. Moving on to some of the teammates here, we have Shore Trooper who taunts, he protects your team. He's probably one of the best heroes to protect your team in the Rancor because he heals, he taunts, so he's taking a lot of the hits if Rancor ever takes a turn, and he's one of the best and safest options whenever we want to try to auto the entire raid. Whenever he's taunting as well, Empire heroes are going to gain an extra 15% turn meter whenever they're using a special, so there's a lot of specials being used, and more turn meter is excellent. Moving on to TIE Fighter Pilot, he has tenacity down. Now, I'm not quite sure what's occurring here, but there is a potency check. The turn meter reduction is resistible, and I'm not sure if the potency check is coming from Thrawn or if it's coming from the hero that's using the special ability, but nevertheless, tenacity down helps with that potency check to make sure that whenever the special is used, it's more likely to reduce turn meter and not get resisted. Also, TIE Fighter Pilot's animations are quick, faster than Emperor Palpatine, faster than Director Krennic, and he has very high damage, so if you want to clear the raid even quicker, you want to use TIE Fighter Pilot, so that's great. Also, we'll talk a little bit more about him when we talk about Jyn. Moving on to Grand Moff Tarkin, he starts off with 2 specials, which is excellent. You're looking for heroes with lots of specials. He also, on his ultimate firepower, actually reduces turn meter, which is excellent. Now, Rancor's turn meter is going to go up because he's going to resist some of the turn meter removal from Fracture, and Tarkin helps to keep that in check and keep it towards the bottom end of the spectrum. Then lastly, we have Jyn Erso. She's there to kind of reset the Rancor back to 0 when there's a string of bad luck and there's a lot of resist on the turn meter removal. She brings Rancor back down to 0 and keeps him in check. Also, her very first special, which gives 100% turn meter to a random ally, well, it's not really random when it's on auto, it's going to go on to the hero with the lowest amount of health. That ends up being TIE Fighter Pilot, which is excellent because he has the highest amount of damage, and he's just going to he also gets advantage when you Omega that ability, so he's going to hit quite hard, and that's excellent. So that's kind of how the team runs. And the last part of running this team is knowing what to do during phase transitions. This is where you're going to have to do a little bit of manual play. You're stalling the Rancor to have Thrawn take enough turns to get Fracture off cooldown to reapply Fracture on the Rancor. So use Maneuver to gain turn meter, especially if Shore Trooper is taunted. You can have Jin give full turn meter to Thrawn, and that helps. You can have Thrawn swap turn meter with another hero on your team that has close to full turn meter, and combine those turn meter manipulation mechanics and the length of a topple. You should have enough time to get that Fracture on the Rancor before he even has an opportunity to take a turn. This also is pretty important during the phase 4 transition because there is no door lock, but the same mechanics are at play. They're trying to just manipulate the turn meter, keep the Rancor's turn meter in check with Tarkin and Jin, etc. And you should have enough time to get the Fracture off. Now, the worst case scenario, the Rancor does take a turn, you can still clear the raid. It's just, you just take a little bit of extra damage, and that's pretty much it. Now let's talk about some of the other lineups that you can run with this team. So some other combinations of teams that you can run Director Krennic in place of TIE Fighter Pilot. Now, Director Krennic has tenacity down on his basic attack, which is quite good. He has 2 specials, which is also quite good, just like Grand Moff Tarkin. But the animation time on his second special takes a while, and I think that comes into play with the Rancor clear time. For some reason, this team takes about 15 minutes or longer to clear the Rancor, so that's not very good. Also, Director Krennic is very difficult to farm to 7 stars to even be able to enter the raid. And TIE Fighter Pilot is a great ship pilot right now, so I actually really recommend TIE Fighter Pilot over this lineup. Now, if you don't have Shore Trooper, I would recommend running another Empire hero here. You do want to have at least 3 Empire heroes to have more opportunities to proc the Fracture, because you need Empire heroes with special abilities. And here's one last lineup that you can use. So I took out TIE Fighter Pilot and I put in Emperor Palpatine. I was still able to auto the entire Rancor raid even without tenacity down, and I would probably recommend using Emperor Palpatine in place of Shore Trooper as an extra character if you don't have a 7-star Shore Trooper and you're going to use TIE Fighter Pilot. So we're going to start wrapping things up here in this video. Today you watched a in-depth educational guide on everything you could possibly want to know about using Thrawn to solo the Rancor. We went over how the team works in detail and other lineups you can use if you don't have some of these particular heroes. We discussed what to do when you transition phases, for example in phase 2 and phase 3 in the raid, and we went over the mods to run and the abilities to Omega for this team. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel for more content, and I will see you guys next time. You're welcome.
The killers understand it.